Welcome, everyone, to It Tastes Different Game Reviews. And tonight, we're going to be talking about Eternights. Eternights is developed by Studio Sai and published by Studio Sai. It's available on Windows, Microsoft Windows, PS4 and 5, released on the 12th of September of 2023, and is an action role-playing dating sim and single player. What a combination, right? It's getting positive to mixed reviews. It's not a full price game. I think it was like a $30 game. It's been on sale from Steam. So if you don't want to get it on PlayStation, get it on Steam. It's a hack and slash, dodge, precision, slow parry game, So, we'll kind of get into this with with the guys, but, we'll talk about the quick time events and the dialogue and what it's really like. So I think we're going to go to the most perverted in this group for Shane to see what he thinks about Eternights. He's grandpa pervert. So what'd you think about this game?
I don't know what part hurts worse, the pervert or the grandpa part. I'll accept the pervert part. This game, I didn't know anything about it when we fired it up. I really didn't. A little bit of back and forth between these guys. It's about all I knew. And we've had some luck with weird ass games before, and this sounded weird, so fired it up. And it started off with my full attention. It grabbed me, and it just led me on this little path for a bit, and then that path stayed right in the middle of the road the entire time. The writing is good in this game. Not the best, but it's good. There's as Pat likes to call it, fan service. There is innuendos everywhere. The story itself is interesting. It's better than most stories you'll find on the Sci-Fi Channel. So, that's where it excels the most. The gameplay, unfortunately, it doesn't bottom out. It just doesn't really go anywhere. It's the same thing virtually the entire time. I mean, you unlock ability, but it doesn't really feel like a new ability. Your skill tree, I never felt like it really worth the crap, honestly. Character designs are pretty interesting. They're not as endowed as Pat would like them to be for some of the characters, but Chani tried. But the overall game is, for me, kind of a mixed bag of nuts. It's not a bad game. It's not a great game. It's a middle of the road game that tries to do some interesting things. Like I said, it pretty much tries to hit several different genres. The dating portions, it's kind of neat at first. But I quit giving a crap about the dating portions of it because, I ain't going to see nothing. So there's your perversion part, Pat. But, the game is an oddity. It is trying to do several different genres, and it doesn't do them bad. It doesn't do them enough in a way that excites me. My biggest complaint about the game, though, is the level designs are all extremely dark. And sometimes I had a hard time determining enemy. Oh, nope, that's Chani sitting in a corner with his legs crossed, peeing himself. And I run over there. Oh, nope. And then I get hit from the back because the camera angles in these dark areas, people, things throwing projectiles at you. Sometimes it's just too dark or too hard to see. And then you get a lump upside your head. So, we can get into more technical stuff in a little bit, but overall, it's not a bad game. And for $30, it's worth the $30. But it is not a game that really kept my focus like it did at the beginning. At the beginning, it was such an interesting story, interesting characters. and then it just stayed. It just stayed the course, and that's, to me, that's all it did. So, not a terrible game, but not great game either. I mean, we've had some good surprises for weird games like this, and unfortunately, this one didn't hit for me all the way. So, Nick, what about you? I mean, we've seen your anime pillows and stuff, and the sticky ones. So, what do you got? I mean, what do you think about this game?
Yeah, I agree. It's very middle of the road. And I agree with you, Shane, that it basically hits the middle of that road and it coasts along it. And it never deviates from being exceptionally great. And it never goes down, never gets really bad. It just stays kind of right in the center, I feel like, the whole time. It does try to do a couple different things, especially like it kind of reminds me of Persona with the whole calendar and day and night cycle, trying to aesthetic of how Persona is. The dating simulation. The problem with this game is it has a lot of mechanics and a lot of things going on in the game, but it seems like they didn't try to take a mechanic and do really something great with that mechanic, right? They just said, okay, I'm going to implement these things and implement them good enough that they're good as far as they work, right? Without being like poorly implemented or bad. But I'm not going to take these mechanics and make them excel in any way whatsoever. So the dating portion doesn't really excel. The combat doesn't excel. The story, which is fine and it works, it doesn't excel either. Like everything's really, like Shane said, everything's really middle of the road, right? It's very safe. This game is very safe when it comes to that, how everything works. And I guess that works in the case, like, you don't want to have like a super bad mechanic because that could really, throw a player off to not liking or enjoying the game, right? Because something, other things may work great, but this one thing that's vital to the game as well, just is freaking horrible, right? Like the dating portion of it is not a bad mechanic. It works. Is it necessary and it works great? Not really. I mean, it is necessary because it does give you white essence. You get white essence and black essence. Black essence is for your character to upgrade their skill points. White essence is for the other characters to upgrade their skill points. You have to spend time with them or scavenge with them to get more white essence and also to unlock more of their skill tree so you can unlock more things. I do think, in my experience playing through the game, I do think that it is important to do these things, especially with a variety of characters, because the skill tree does help, right? As you progress in the game, things do get harder. And if you're not unlocking stuff through the skill tree, it's going to get difficult for you to stay alive and go through there. Not to say that you couldn't, I mean, there's some skilled players out there, but I know I had to spend points in there. Otherwise I would have been, my ass handed to me several times, because there are some combat encounters that are, this game does have cheap combat encounters. Okay, I'll give you that. It does have cheap combat encounters where, I played it on the PlayStation 5. There are times, I know Pat played it on the PC, so I don't know if it was any different, but I know there's times when in combat specifically, when you go to dodge, because you can hit X to dodge, or, A, I guess, if you're playing with an Xbox controller. Or you press the other button to attack, and the game sometimes in combat would not respond to what I was telling it to do. Like I would hit the button to dodge and the game was like, nah, man, you didn't dodge. You didn't do shit. You just get hit and you're like, what the hell? I hit the button. And then sometimes you go into attack and you hit the button to attack and your character just stands there and you're like, why aren't you hitting? Why aren't you doing anything? It almost seems like the response time was a little bit off sometimes. Sometimes it was fine. Sometimes it was off. The puzzles, this game does have puzzles. The puzzles are fine. They work, except for, we did talk, before this, we talked about there's this light puzzle that has these, when you step on this little thing, these little lights light up and there's arrows on the thing that, and logically you're thinking, okay, it's 2 green. Green is up. So it's to up. left is purple, 3 left. I don't know if mine was broken, but mine was completely not what the grid said at all. What it said it was 3 up, but here's mine. Mine said, okay, for an example, mine said it was 2 up, 2 green up. Well, no, it wasn't. It was 3 green up. And then it said it was left, 4 purple left, which that was true. It was. And then it said it was like 2 green up again, which I think it was at that point. But then it said it was like, or no, it said something like along the lines of like, it was a green up and then 2 red rights, but it wasn't. It was like 1 red right and then a green up all the way up to the top. And I was like, I looked back after I like looked at the grid and figured out what the grid was doing. I looked back at the grid and go, what the hell? Like that.
I know exactly why that screwed you up, because that's not the pattern. You have to watch it when it first lights up, because it goes 3 green, 2 red, and then it goes back to 2 greens, purple, and then the last 2 light up, 2 greens. So you have to watch the pattern that lights up. You can't just start from the bottom.
Can you
step back on the button. You have to step back on the button, but you have to remember it. So I wrote it. I had a notepad and I wrote it down because that exact thing happened to me.
Recorded.
But yeah, you got to watch the light pattern. It goes like, it goes 1, 2, 3 green, and then 1, 2 purple, and then it jumps back and it goes 1, 2 green, 1 red, and then it jumps all the way to the end, and it's like 2. So.
Well, I just figured it out on my own after a few trial and error.
Nothing tells you a lot of things like that in this game. There's lots of little things that just you have to figure out on your own. And I had to Google it, Pat. I don't know if you did, but
no, I just watched the light pattern. After the first time I fell, I'm like, wait a minute, the light doesn't start at the bottom here. It starts in the middle, and then it goes back to the bottom. So I'm like, is it the 3 greens?
I didn't even notice that.
Yeah, the pattern starts in the middle and goes green, green, green.
What even sucks for me is the first one, because there's 2 of these in this room, right?
The first one's right in order.
Well, the problem is the first one is somehow I missed the button to activate the lights. So I didn't even notice that there was a button behind me. So I just figured it out on my own what the pattern, what it was to get to the middle. And I was like, how in the hell you just like keep falling until you figure this shit out? But no, and then the second one, I noticed that the button there, and I was like, oh, okay. And I tried it from back to front to back. I didn't notice that it lit up in a certain order, because I just noticed at that point that there was a button to light up those symbols on the ground. But Shane's exactly right. There is a lot of puzzles in the game that do not clarify exactly what it wants you to do. It's really kind of like you have a puzzle here, figure it out, and you're kind of going, how does this work? Some of the puzzles are super easy. You have certain puzzles that are like those old those little old puzzle games that, all the blocks are rearranged and you have to shift them all to get them to match up and make a picture, stuff like that. And then you have various other types of puzzles. Some are more complicated than others. The light one gave me the most because I didn't notice that. So that probably would have helped, but I made it through. I figured it out by just trial and error, falling several times, but that's all right. I got through it. But yeah, I mean, you do have to, in the game, you do end up, you can end up, becoming boyfriend, girlfriend with one of the girls. There's 3 girls and 1 guy that you can romance in the game. Clearly the game, because you can romance them all. So clearly the game, once you beat the game, it does have a new game plus. So clearly the game wants you to go through and work on other romances, because even though there are times where the game, you have to do something and there's a certain amount of time, and it cycles between day and night, you can spend time with individuals and scavenge and do other things like that to up their love with you or whatever the heck. But in order to advance that even further, you have to advance your, when you make certain decisions, you get points into expression and points into, courage, and like 2 other ones that I can't think of off the top of my head, but there's 2 other ones. And certain girls or the guy, you can only advance them so far depending on the level that is. It goes up to level 4. So like if you don't have expression up to level 3, for example, Yuna is the one that uses that one. You can't spend time with her until you get up to level 3. And then again, you can't spend time with her again until you get to 4. That doesn't block you from becoming girlfriend, boyfriend with that individual. It just blocks you from doing more, spending more time with them.
You can't hit it unless you get the infection.
So clearly the game wants you to play through it several times. I don't think I'll play through it again. I'm pretty sure on that. One time enough was fine with me. But again, like Shane said, this game is middle of the road. The cool thing about this, and before I send it over to Pat, is they do have some certain cutscenes do have like anime cutscenes, which are nice. They're really nice. They're really nicely,
and that's a terrible thing. They only had like 10 minutes in the whole damn game because the cutscenes that they did have them in were nicely done.
They're between acts, most of them.
Yeah, but they only last 2 minutes.
And they're really greatly done. That's why I think this, instead of being a game, if they would have made it an anime or something like that with the whole concept and the people on the train and like all the pervertingness and stuff and the innuendos and everything, that would be a really funny anime to watch more than it is playing the game, right? So hopefully, maybe just like an anime movie. They don't have to make it a series or anything, but whatever. I mean, like it would be funny to watch that, and it'd probably be pretty entertaining. But as a game, it's just very middle of the road. It is only $30 game. I don't know. I'd probably wait till it goes on sale if you really want to play it. There are other games out there right now that are definitely worth playing more than this. But maybe if it goes down to like $15 or something, then pick it up. If it's half off. What do you think, Pat?
Yeah, I pretty much agree with you guys. The little animated cutscenes in between acts are kind of the funniest parts of the game. It is full of like innuendos and just this and that, and I mean, it's like halfway. I agree with Nick. My biggest problem with it is that it tries to halfway be different games, right? It halfway tries to be a hack and slash game, and then it halfway tries to be a dating sim, and then it's just weird. The whole juggling the calendar and the acts thing is kind of, the juggling the calendar and then seeing what's, before, because you have timers, right? It says you must destroy this or do this before so many days. And you're like, okay, how many days is it really going to take me? Is it, because you can't not everything can be done in one day, right? Like there's certain situations where you have to do something and it takes 2 days because you get to a midway point and you can't continue, So it's juggling that and the day and night cycle. So you can only do like the combatter going through the walls or whatever during the day. And then nighttime, you can do pretty much like scavenging activities with the people to help build up your skill levels and your, I don't know what you want to call it, your attunation or whatever you want to call them, how well in tune you are with them, So there's it's a lot to kind of do and to remember, because they want you have to remember things like that pattern thing we were talking about. Like you have to look at that and okay, I'm doing this. And a lot of the puzzles are the same way, right? Like there's picture puzzles where you have to match like things that are showing up in the picture to turn on things. And then you do like a play and match game where as soon as you step off the thing, the symbols you're trying to match go away. So you don't know where they are and you got to remember them and just things like that. And then not to mention like scavenging. The scavenging is always the same. Like the stores always have the same thing. So you have to remember what's at every store, because somebody will say, hey, I need to scavenge for, I don't know, freaking toothbrush or something. And you're like, which one of those places had the toothbrush? Is it the library? Or whatever, You got to remember that. Or the first time you try to find it, you're just running through every shelf trying to hit it and go, okay, I got to remember what's here just in case somebody else needs to scavenge something. So, and then conversation, and it is funny in parts, but for the most part, my biggest complaint is the dialogue system. Like it's completely voiced over for the most part, like 90 some odd % voiced over. But you have to move the dialogue forward. Like they'll say their piece and then it stops. And I'm like, come on, I don't want to have to hit A every time they're done talking for the scene of the dialogue to continue. That's the most annoying thing. Like stop when I have a decision to make. Perfectly normal game. But this game, you have to hit A every time they say one line. They say a line, you hit A. And if they're going to say a second line, it pops up. And then it moves on to the next person, back and forth, back and forth. And there's a lot of that in between acts and scenes and things like that. There's a lot of just pushing A while you're waiting for them to finish talking. And you're just like, come on, that's the dumbest thing ever. What day and age are we in? You know, and then there are some scenes that progress by themselves, but it's like the slowest dialogue in history. Like they'll finish talking and it just sits there for like 20 seconds. And then it advances to the next dialogue. And I'm like, so you started to do this and then you changed your mind. I don't get it. So to me, I don't know what the reasoning was behind that, but that's my biggest complaint to the game. Overall, I didn't have any bugs or any issues with the game. Like I said, Nick just power ran it and missed the light patterns because when it first popped up, the first room fools you because when you do the first room, they're in exact order from bottom to top. And then you go into the next one and you're like, wait a minute, that didn't start at the bottom. It started in the middle. Why did the light pattern start in the middle and then come back to the bottom? And so you're like, oh, okay, you dirty little bastards, you know? But it just does stuff like that. But, you know, it makes it interesting. There are tedious things about the game, but overall, I didn't beat the game. So I'm over halfway. I'm pretty close to. There's only 5 complete acts in the game, and I'm pretty much a good chunk of the way through. Me and Shane are pretty much a good chunk of the way through Act 3. Nick, how long do you think it took you to beat it, man? Like 9 hours, 8 hours?
Yeah, probably about 9 hours, 10 hours, depending. But yeah, somewhere around there.
Yeah. So, I mean, you know, it's just it's a weird little weird sim game. I don't know how to explain it. It excels at certain times, and a lot more often than not, it just falls flat. Like some of the humor is just like not there, or just weird. It's fan service anime without the bleeding noses. I didn't see any bleeding noses in this one, so you know nobody. Which I guess that's because you didn't see any nudity or anything that you would see in anime that causes bleeding noses, right? I guess there's a couple of scenes where there should have been some bloody noses, but you know. But overall, it's kind of it misses more often than it hits, which is kind of funny because I saw a bunch of reviews before we started, and I'm like, oh, IGN France gave it a 9. It must be an amazing game. And then we get in there, and I'm like, oh, it's just okay, you know. And I got it on sale on Steam. I think it was like I can't remember how much off, but I only paid like $26 or 26 and some change or something like that. So to me, if you like dating sim games with a mix of hack and slash combat, this might be right up your alley, especially with New Game Plus, so you can romance the entire crew of the ship, you know, the entire crew of the train. So, you know, I guess that's about as good as it's going to get there, I'd say. But I wouldn't play through this again because nothing's going to change, right? I guess, you know, I don't see what would going to change. Maybe some of the voice dialogue might change since you're further along the romance chain with a certain person, but I guess, I don't know. They all seem to have their set dialogues.
Yeah, maybe Chani will get his day in your lap. Like, just the game makes Chani. You work for a dating simulator. It makes you work too damn hard to see them anime boobs,
which you can't. So
you don't see anything.
Just I know, but the whole thing is, you know,
I romance two girls.
I'm wooing them to, you know, do my thing, and it just.
You're wooing them to show them the tentacle.
Yeah, literally. Hey, baby, look at my tentacle. You know, it's. Sorry if anybody knows like that. Didn't mean to offend you, but it's ridiculous. They could have skipped the whole wooing part of the game and maybe just concentrate a little bit more on combat, puzzles.
It does have
some of the puzzles were interesting, but most of them really weren't, you know, mind bending except for, you know, Nick's.
Yeah. Nick just didn't pay attention. He's like, ooh, there's a missing floor. I'm just going to try to run across this here. Oh, fall in.
I put it on extreme mode.
Yeah. No hints whatsoever. You just try every square manually till you find it. Right?
I figured it out pretty quickly though. But I didn't spend that much time in that spot.
That's funny. But yeah, so, you know, if you like that kind of stuff, this game will be for you. But the combat is interesting, but after a while, once you get the whole parry or dodge system down, it's pretty easy mode, I would say. You know, now you get to some bosses that just take longer to grind down. You know, or you get abilities that, you know, like I can't remember what it's called. It's the brutality or whatever, where you beat the crap out of them. You put some points into that, and you can build up a scale. And once it builds up high enough, it's like an execution almost, where it doesn't really kill them if they're a big boss, but it takes off a good chunk of health. So,
yeah,
but like it's pretty much
overkill
or something. Yeah, I can't remember what it is, but yeah,
Yeah.
But then bosses have shields on them, and you have to do the whole rock paper scissors type thing. It's like, okay, fire beats ice, ice
Right.
beats fire.
Yeah. Every girl has an element, and then you have to use the opposing element against whatever
to break down barriers on the bosses, or regular minions, some tougher intermediate minions or something. You can use them on there, and it tears off a lot more health. So there's concepts like that, and then you get like abilities for your right trigger that you socket that do certain things and in combat, and RB abilities, RB and hitting the buttons do things, like charging and things like that. So it has an interesting concept behind it, but it just gets too much rinse and repeat. Like the enemy variances are just not there. Like the intermediate enemies change up a little bit, but in all honesty, it's like once you run into one, you're like, their pattern. And you're like, oh, okay, there's a briefcase dude, I know how to beat him. There's a caster chick, I know how to beat her. There's a sword samurai chick, I know how to beat her. There's the weird looking dude with strings coming on, I know how to beat him, et cetera, et cetera. Their patterns are fairly easy. And then you run into act bosses. So bosses at the end of acts, and that's where the difficulty kind of comes into play, because they take a little bit of strategy, but the game gives you the ability to heal. So at that point, it's just playing cautiously when you run out of heals or whatever. So overall, it's an okay game for me. It's not a 9 or an 8. I think it's a little better than middle of the road, just because the combat's kind of fun, but it does get repetitive.
So 6.5 for $12.
Yep. So you guys got anything else on this one? I think we're about wrapped up. Shane didn't get to see any fan service really. And
no, I mean, if I've got a damn tentacle, I should be able to use it in a game like this.
Nick romanced 2 of them and didn't get even fan service. So
I think because this was a very small team of developers. I think with a bigger team, they could make a sequel or something very similar to this that would, because they have some great ideas with what they're doing here. It's just the execution's a little off, right? If they went more, I think, with the fan service and more with more into the whole dating thing, like make it a little bit more, because it doesn't feel like there's any way to not screw it up, right? And just and more variety in the combat level design and just more variety and things like that. Just expand all these ideas, expand them out into more focused and more advanced things. Then it could turn into be a really cool, like a genre of game, right? With like this dating sim RPG type game, right? But who knows what'll happen after the release of this. But just one last thing, word of advice: if you're going to go scavenge, save right before then. Because then if you screw up and go to the wrong place, you can just load it back up and go to a different place.
Nick is condoning cheesing it over here, but it is
because there are times I did memorize, but there were times where I accidentally was trying to click through, and I would accidentally click the library because it's the first thing that's selected. And then sometimes they would want something in particular, and I'd be like, was that the convenience store or the warehouse? I cannot remember. So I always make sure to save it just in case I was wrong. Then I could just reload. Because if you're wrong, you don't get another chance. No, you do the next night, but
it's after it's over, it ends the night, right? And you go to the next day. So that was probably my only complaint too about some of the QuickTime events, is that the way the game runs through the QuickTime events, it has like, has you hit like X on the Xbox controller, has you hit X at the right time when the circle swells out, and then it just has you hammer the X button, and you're just like hammer, and all of a sudden it stops because it doesn't always have a circle that you fill in. So you just hammer, and then all of a sudden the other the shrinking box, if you're still hammering X, guess what? You failed the combo move and you'll miss out on some damage.
Did you use your Xbox controller on the PC? Okay.
Yeah.
That's why I was getting confused, because you're like, hitting the Xbox, and it's like, wait a minute. This thing's only on PlayStation.
It was square for us.
Yeah. Nope. I used old trusty Xbox controller on my PC here.
Also with this game is during certain story beats, there are moments where the story beats are kind of like, they're trying to be impactful, but they have like this whole cutscene going on and like the music going, and it's kind of an impactful moment. And you're like, okay, this is kind of impactful. And then the game's like, and loading. And you're like, okay, you just like killed that moment, right? It seems like there's several sections in the game where something like that happens and the game just decides to cut it right there. Like they cut the scene too early and then it goes to a loading screen and then you're on to the next thing. Like you needed to stretch that out a bit because that was a more impactful. They do have try to have some impactful moments and they seem to cut that a little too early in the cutscenes.
All right.
Just needs more tentacle time.
Well, let us know what your thoughts are down in the comment. Are you in Shane's? If you played this, are you in Shane's corner where you needed more tentacles? You need more fan service? What do you need? More combat? If you haven't played this, are you going to get this? Is this your kind of game? This typically isn't in the genre of games I play, I'll be honest, but as Shane had mentioned, we've had some hidden gems because we just picked something new that was coming out that was outside of our wheelhouse, right? So, let us know down in the comments, if you bought this and you enjoyed it. It's like a great game. What does it compare to? What are some other similar titles, that maybe if somebody likes this, they might check it out, And we've reached the end of this episode. If you haven't subscribed already, why not? We need a little help. Help us out. Hit that button. Hit the bell to get notified whenever we put out new videos. And we hope you enjoyed this episode and hope to catch you in the next one.
See ya.